Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. And it's not so cold this morning, so welcome to our co-host. Great to have you here. I see Wilhelm disappeared there for a second, getting his coffee. So today we're going to do something very, very different. As you can see, we don't have a guest speaker. And what we decided to do was actually to have a Wisdom Circle Day. And that is where we're going to actually put a subject onto the table, and we're all going to discuss it. And from all our perspectives, we're going to learn a little bit about what we need to do in this situation. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about when growth outruns the business. Now, this is something that I've found has happened sometimes when people go along and put a tender together. They're very excited. They win the tender, and then they say, oh dear, now what? How are we going to deliver this, what we promised in the tender? And this is something that we all want. We all want to grow our businesses. We all want to have that next contract. We all want that next big business deal that's going to come through and actually going to help us to actually make more money at the end of the day. But the question is, are we ready for it? So that's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to be looking at this. And what I'd like you to think about right now as a listener is, what happens tomorrow morning if you received a call and you said, by the way, you've just won the biggest client that you ever dreamed of. You've got the contract and you need to start today. What is going to happen? And how are you going to deal with it? Are you prepared? So the first thing that I would like to talk about is, obviously there's a number of issues that we need to look at. We need to look at people. Have we got sufficient people in place? Have we got the sufficient cash flow that's available to us? Have we got the systems in place to actually deal with that extra work? Do our suppliers, are they able to deliver to us what we need in order to actually get the stuff that we need to actually deliver or to manufacture so that we can deliver what we promised? Is our leadership right? And then most importantly, how do we deal with the risk? So we're going to deal with all those issues today. One of the things I'd like to just talk about generally, in South Africa, we do have certain problems. And one of the problems that we have is cash flow. For example, if you have a look at what is on the government gazette right now, and you look at the National Treasury, do you know that there are approximately 12.4 billion of unpaid invoices that were reported in the last quarter of last year? Now that will hurt a business dramatically if you don't have the cash. That's just one item. Obviously, government have put in place a number of items that we need to look at. ISO 22301 is one of them. And there are a number of others, but we're not going to be talking about those things today. We're going to be talking just the practicality of business and what we need to do to ensure that we are ready for that next big contract. So we're going to talk about, can you sell your business that is in trouble? And this is now where we need to actually look at and ask Russell to help us, because Russell is his lens is sales, business development, and sustainable growth. So Russell, to you, I've got a question. Salespeople are taught to pursue the opportunities and close the business, but can business actually become a victim of its own sales success? Russell.
David, thank you for the question. I think the best way to answer this is to talk about a real life situation that I went through when I was on a sales team selling motor vehicle components. So first thing is, I think we look at this from a small business perspective. It happens with big business as well. And if it can happen with big business, obviously it can happen so much easier with us. So this organization was one of the biggest manufacturers of certain components in the world. Started in South Africa, but its head office was in Europe. And they had a system called 5-in-1. So for every 5 part numbers that you purchase of a single part number, obviously the popular ones, you get one free. So it was full retail. It actually worked out to be about a 20% discount on the deal. This organization used to make thousands of components. We used to stock hold over 120,000 components. So this was a big organization. And what happened was when we took this to market, it went crazy. There's certain items, for example, an item on a Toyota Hilux, where more than 30% of what was manufactured was bought from 2 clients in Botswana, which were my clients. Ultimately, what happened was these fast movers ran out of stock so quickly that we actually had a problem in the months after and the deals after, because a lot of people didn't buy because they didn't have the money at that stage. They weren't interested because they weren't holding high volume, and they were just doing the normal month-to-month purchases, which meant that the next 2 months they couldn't get those part numbers. In that specific industry, we're working on minimum and maximum stock levels. And it's a lot of the times they were working on a minimum stock level rather than a maximum because, money in the bank was worth more to them. What ultimately transpired from this was that we had an operational issue. And I believe there's 4 elements in business that get affected when you outsell your capacity. Number 1 is operations. The team, which is geared up to do the deliveries and so on, is all of a sudden overwhelmed because of the outcome of that. So deliveries were delayed. People, we started getting telephone calls from our normal regular clients, and like in the industry, 20% of your clients is 80% of your business. And the other 80% of the clients started phoning and saying, why can't we get stock? What's going on? You guys are doing this to us again. So the people started being put under a lot of pressure, specifically the sales team. And when I say sales team, I'm including the ladies on the order desks, because they used to get it in the neck as well. Again, you guys don't have stock. What's going on? And a whole lot of other comments. I think the third thing that influences maybe not a big organization like that so much, although a lot of their accounts were 30-day from statements, so what they were selling today was only paid 60 days later. If it was bought in the first of the month, which we did. We started this on the first of the month. So there's a lot of money coming in, but all of a sudden you need to now invest money into the remanufacturing of product for stock holding and to look after the other 80% of the clients. And I think the most important damage that it did was the reputation. When we walk into the big clients that were utilizing this and could because they had the cash flow and they had the market, we were the heroes. But that was such a small percentage of our total client base. When I walked into my normal clients, there were sometimes when we did these strange sales gimmicks where I had clients that I had to take 2-3 months again to build reputation with them, because they don't see the company, they see me, and they blame me because I am the closest. There's a saying that you hurt those that are closest to you. It was the same in that environment. We were given a opportunity to boost sales, which was great, but I think ultimately to the detriment of a couple of other things. How we should have done it differently, my take, was knowing that we're going to go into that, do over a 3-month period extra production to cater for that market and to foresee your normal sales, because not everybody utilized that, and identify the specific high-end markets products. So what we had A, B, C's, and D's, for example. Your A's and B's are the ones that are actually your bread and butter because they sell all the time. So, you had to make sure that you are looking at your forward projection of sales on those products so that you don't land up in a position where you can't look after the normal, smaller client. So, yes, I think you need to really be, I don't want to say limit your sales capacity, but build yourself into that sales capacity. In other words, if you know that you have got a specific market that you're going to target, make sure that you can deliver into that market, and don't short sell yourself either, because as you guys probably know, I don't believe in discount, rather value stack. But if the value stack does create more sales, gear yourself up before the time. I think that's probably about the closest I can get to answering your question.
Thank you, Russell. So basically, what we're saying is it's the right growth at the right time, and I think that's something we need to consider. I was just thinking about what happened with myself when I was working with Sun International. Obviously, Sun International was a dominant figure in the casino industry pre 1996. And with Sol Kerzner and Sun City and Carousel and all the different casinos in all the homelands. And then when things changed in this country, basically urban casinos were allowed, and there was a rush to actually acquire these new licenses in South Africa. And obviously, what happened was there were 40 licenses that were allocated. That's 40 casino licenses, urban casino licenses, and then each province was allocated a certain proportion of that. And I remember when I was at Sun International, suddenly there was like, okay, guys, we've got to go for every single tender that's available. And we were basically tendering on a number of bids for acquiring those licenses. And at the end of the day, we had to cut back because we had to say, okay, which are the prime ones that we want to actually get? And because there were 40, obviously, that were available. And we had to look at, say, okay, we're only going to pick and choose cherry pick the best ones. And that's exactly what happened. And then what happened was there was a huge amount of work that needed to be done. And I remember working on a number of different bids all at one time to actually acquire these casino licenses. And what Sun International did, which actually was very clever, they basically created different companies in the different provinces to deal with each of those bid applications. So they actually divided up the actual workflow so that there was sufficient capacity to actually do it. And then guess what? They were awarded a number of these licenses. They actually won every single license they actually, not every single one. There was one or two that they didn't get, but all the ones that I worked on, we actually got. And then you can imagine the amount of work that needed to be done to actually acquire those, to actually carry out and actually implement that. And we're talking about lots and lots of money, lots of resources, and so on. So I think the question really is, when one is going for something, you go, especially in the tendering process, you might go along and put a number of tenders in, hoping that you'll get one of them, and then suddenly you get most of them. Then you need to actually really think about which ones you actually want to acquire and how you're going to actually deliver them. And that's quite a big question, I think that, sometimes pursuing and winning contracts is fantastic, but you must think about which ones maybe you shouldn't have actually pursued, because you might just have you might not have sufficient capacity or resources to actually deliver those. I'm going to go on to talk to ask Wilhelm to talk about teams. The question is, do you have sufficient people on board to actually carry out the work, the additional work that you might have? Do they have the systems in place? Have they learned the necessary skills? And what about accountability regarding them and the leadership that is needed to actually get those teams to work? And this is a passion of Wilhelm, because this is something that he really works towards within his environment that he works in. Over to you, Wilhelm.
Thank you very much, David. Yes, this is a very interesting topic. People want to scale. They want to grow their business. And usually visionary leaders, they see these opportunities and they are excited about it. And then when it comes, that is a problem, because usually, and especially nowadays, in lots of cases, the companies are so lean that two people or one person do two or three people's job. But the first thing that happened actually is that the company fall into a burnout company culture. So people are tired. You will find there's more conflict. I focus on the people factor. So all the other things might be in place, even the systems, even the money, everything might be in place. But are your people ready for it? And usually at this stage, for instance, before they scale, before they grow, everybody is already under pressure. Now, what now? Now, what if tomorrow you get that contract and now it's just more work? So people just do as little as possible to stay out of trouble. Otherwise, they will burn out. And then the CEO or the salespeople, they made all the promises, but you can't deliver. And that's because of people. So it's very important to understand if your company is really ready. I developed the culture readiness index. It's a questionnaire that people can do to help them to see, but where are the gaps? Where are the weak points? Because when the pressure comes, then the cracks, then there's the cracks are there, and the dam wall will fall apart, whatever. So it's so important to understand that, and maybe do your check first and say, but are my people ready to be able to handle what comes?
But what I'd like to ask, perhaps from your experience that you had with Volker that you are currently working with, they had a situation a little while back where they possibly lost a contract that they had, and then suddenly they had to re-engineer their business, and then they got new contracts. How did they actually deal with, first of all, the situation of losing a potential contract with their current staff and having maybe too many staff to actually deliver the product, then going into a new situation where they actually now got new product that they're doing, and actually then dealing with the upsell of that and the upscaling of that. Wilhelm?
Yeah, you see, there's always that thing of, in manufacturing, it happens. There's that contract, and now it's not there anymore. Then there's too many people, and there's retrenchments. It's one of those things. So one should actually be more on the front foot, and expect what can come, not too quick to retrench people, but to think before the time. But the problem that people sit with, and most companies I find, are most of the time in crisis management. Everything is a crisis. So they fall into survival mode, and it's just handling the crisis from day to day. And that put a lot of pressure on people. They burn out. They can't handle it. More absenteeism, more faults, more deadlines that they miss, all those things. So it's something that sort of evolved, and you must be on the front foot and stop and say, listen, what are we going to do about the situation? And I find that the biggest problem is leadership. There's no leaders anymore. People are not really taking leadership. They don't take responsibility. They just try to survive. And all these other things pops out where there's politics and distrust and conflict, unhealthy conflict. But if you are ready, and if your team or your leadership is in place, then lots of pressure will be taken off the top leaders. Because now what happens in a manufacturing business, for instance, the problems that leaders should solve here at the bottom is escalating to the top. Some are right through. They don't follow the steps. They don't solve the problems because they don't have the energy to solve the problems. They're just too tired, and they run to the managing director, and he must solve stupid problems, for instance. And it's all about leadership that's not in place. There's I can name you the 6 very important dimensions of leadership that people should be aware of. The first thing is you need to lead yourself. Leadership starts with personal leadership first. If you can't lead yourself, how do you expect to lead other people? Then you need to lead with energy. If you lack energy, if you're tired, how do you expect your people to have energy? They follow you. You are the energizer. If lead your team. Do you lead your team? Most people can't lead the team. You know, those difficult conversations that they need to take. They don't know how to do that. They rather say, let's hope for the best. Maybe this thing will resolve itself. So that's serious. Are your people ready for that? They got the technical skills, maybe they are expert in their field, but they don't know how to lead. Lead through change. You talk about, because this is all about change. Change is happening. There's more clients, more pressure. Can they take change? You know, people resist change. And if you don't know how to lead them through change, it's a problem. Lead with a plan. Do they really have a plan? Do you know what is the plan? And even if the plan is not working out, are you still there, or are you closing your office door and say, oh, don't disturb my peace now? I don't know. Even if you don't know, how do you handle that? And do you lead and leave with a legacy as a leader? Are you really starting to build leaders? You know, if you're in crisis mode and you are uncertain of yourself and you can't keep yourself and others accountable, it's very difficult to leave a legacy or to build other leaders so that the day when you leave, they're ready to carry on. So there's so many things that's important to think about. But I suggest test, use the assessment. I got the tools. Use it, just test, cost you nothing, and say, but where are the gaps so that we can first fix that, because that is where it will break if the pressure comes.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Wilhelm. I'm just going to go. We are going to be giving a book away. It's called the Growth Readiness Check. And if you'd like to comment ready in the actual comments together with your takeaways from today, we'll send that to you. So I'll just play that again. Comment ready together with your takeaway from today's discussion, and we'll be sharing that with you a little bit later on today. All right, let's just go back. I just want to talk to, we've got still a little bit of time. I want to talk to you about two things, Wilhelm. The one is actually, keeping the same skills that you need, the good skills. And when I was in the construction industry, one of the things that we found that, if you go around the block, everyone says I can lay a brick, right? But to actually get a bricklayer that actually can do a good job is difficult. They're not around every corner. So we had to, when I had Flagstone Developments, we had to actually keep our staff. And when you're doing a project, unfortunately what happens is, you start with the foundations, then you go to the brickwork, then you go to the plaster, then you go to the painting and internal finishes. But the bricklayer is not, he can't plaster or he can't paint properly. So you're paying a highly skilled person for a job that is, you can actually get a much cheaper person to do it. So what we used to do in our construction business is we used to then have side projects that we would do to actually keep that person busy so that we could still pay him and keep him on our books. How do other companies deal with that, Wilhelm, from your findings? How do people deal with retaining the skills that are necessary, that might be expensive, but they don't actually have the work for them at that point in time?
Yeah, you see, it's all about the culture. People don't want to leave, but if there's a bad company culture, and I call it a burnout company culture, if it's getting hot there, if it's stressed the whole time, then people leave. There's actually three types of people. The first one, they say, listen, if I don't move here, then I will burn out, because these people will just sap all my energy day by day because of what's going on there. And there's different reasons. For instance, distrust. If there's a distrust the whole time, then it drains energy and people want to leave. Good skilled people leave. The other type of person say, listen, if I will burn out here. And as I've mentioned earlier, they do as little as possible just to stay out of trouble. They are there, but they just do as little as possible. Otherwise, it won't work for them. They will burn out. Then there's the other fools. they, sorry for that word, but they stay and they work hard and they do their best and they burn out. And you know, if you burn out, you wake up one morning and you can't go back to work. For 2 years, you will not be able to go back to your work. You can't just have a 2-week holiday. I talk about real burnout now. So that's the problem. Now, sometimes when I talk to CEOs, I say, listen, you need to protect your people, especially your good people. Often people say, listen, if they are too lazy to work, then they must go. Now, lazy people never burn out. They never burn out. They're too lazy to burn out. It's only the people that really make a difference and that take things responsible or take the responsibility and seriously that burn out. So lazy people don't burn out. Then they say, but we will get some other people. You must remember one thing: to get another person back on par with what you had take you 2 years at least 2 years. You can't do it quicker. It doesn't matter if it's a CEO level or executive level or wherever. It take you 2 years. Only after 2 years, that person really contribute to the company again and are back on par and whatever. So important rule is to take care of your people, your good people. Make sure they are okay. They are not burning out. And that's where leadership again comes back. And we need to focus on it. It is said that I think it's about 84% of workers say they leave because of their manager. Bad management, bad leadership. That's why they leave. So you need to make sure your leaders are really good leaders. That's 6 dimensions that I talked about, and that will keep them there. Of course, if the pawpaw strike the fan and you lose contracts or whatever, retrenchments will follow. And that's the last thing. You don't want that. But being proactive, assess your situation, make sure you are okay, and where are the gaps? Where should you work on to strengthen your system? And I talk about the human system. I talk about human system. I don't talk about the other system. But make sure your human system is okay, because they are still the people that drive the business. Mm-hmm. So it's about being proactive.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the thing is, any business, put systems in place and keep your best employees so that you can deal with that growth. Thanks, Willem. Let's go to Glenn. Glenn looks at leadership, purpose, ownership, readiness, and accountability. And the question I have to you, Glenn, we've talked about sales, we've talked about contracts and tenders, we've looked at systems and teams, but one thing is, what about the actual business owner themselves? What happens in their case in actually dealing with, and I think this comes back to a little bit of what Willem has spoken about, but can the owner actually, is he the biggest constraint in the business, or is he actually the biggest asset to the business? Well, again, over to you.
Thanks, David. And it's an excellent question. As far as the question is, what if the thing, in other words, can the owner become the biggest constraint? The answer is absolutely yes. However, before I go into that, I just wanted to come back to that original question and what we actually discussed in it, and that is what happens when the opportunity arrives before the business is ready for it, and then what would break first. I think it's important to just answer that before I go into the leadership situation. For me, I think one of the very first things is about service standards. And if you think about it, if I can sum that up in just one word, I would say the word capacity. Has the business got the capacity to actually change and do that work? Interesting enough, that capacity also includes time, equipment, systems, production capacity, administration, management attention, all those things. It actually includes all of that. But at the same time, it's about whether you've actually done the planning beforehand. Because if I come back to leadership, as the leader of the business, or as the owner or the entrepreneur or business owner, this should have actually been planned right up front. You should have actually been aware of these things right up front and should have planned ahead in terms of those things. Even speaking from Russell's perspective and the story that he told, there was good planning that took place, but I don't think all the obstacles were actually looked at that could have taken place in the future. And if that had actually been done, those things could have been overcome far quicker. So it's about the planning and looking ahead and looking at what kind of obstacles are in the way that could be in the way as far as that growth, whether it's linear growth, whether it's scaling, whatever it might be. That's extremely important from a leadership perspective. And ultimately, what actually takes place is that as far as the leader is concerned, instead of being owner-led, it actually becomes owner-dependent. So the staff and all the people are typically, because they don't know what to do, they come to you as the owner and they go, well, what now, Glenn? What now, Glenn? What now, Glenn? And so Valaram was talking about burnout. Well, there we go. All the stress, the burnout, etc. It all starts flowing through into the business, and that's what takes place. So at the end of the day, I actually talk about the gap, and it's quite an interesting concept, the gap between demand and capacity. That gap is something that you need to actually look at from the perspective of, is there going to be growth? Will I actually get this contract? And if I do get it, what is that gap between the demand and the capacity? If I can actually overcome that right up front, it can certainly help and make a massive difference. Mm. So I can talk a lot further about this, but I think due to time, I think I'm going to hand it back to you and hand back for Marna, because I think she has quite a bit to talk about as far as the risk is concerned. And let's take it further from there.
Great. Thank you. Marna, over to you. You muted.
Yes. Goodness, sorry about that. Yeah. I think David wants to press my mute button sometimes. But anyway, we've talked about mental health and all that, but there's more than just that when a business grows, because it changes more than just your turnover. It also changes what the business can lose, what it may be held responsible for, and what it must be able to deliver. So while we were talking, I was thinking about a client that started, it's a transport client, and they wanted to expand their business into Namibia. The salesperson was very excited about this new contract that they signed, because it was a huge contract. But what they forgot to tell the broker was that it's a hazardous product. And their goods in transit only covered normal goods in transit and not hazardous. And needless to say, there was a huge accident. The driver passed away due to the chemicals that he inhaled. There was cleanup, spill up. I'm talking about a 6 million rand loss on that contract. And I remember the salesperson or the marketing person said he was so impressed with when he did the quotation for them was they did not even have to cut their rates. I mean, their normal rates went through, and it was like a huge profit they were looking forward to. But it was a 6 million rand loss, more than that, because they had bought trucks and they had bought so many things. So I think you need to understand your commodity, your business, and what you're going into. And then, Russell, you spoke about the 80-20 principle, which is actually very interesting, because it's something that I applied into my own business, because you need to balance the scale. So you've got to ask a question, which critical 20% supports 80% of the business ability to deliver. That's very important. If you can't deliver on your contract, I mean, you're doomed from day one. Is it reliant on only one key employee? Or one supplier? This is very important, because I remember, I don't know if you guys remember the whole ArcelorMittal fire a couple of years ago. And the industry came to a dead standstill, because so many companies and businesses were reliant on one supplier. I had a client, it's still my client at the moment, they provide these roof sheets. They they weren't able to deliver for about 6 months, because now they had to order from China or wherever they got the product for. So you have to take that into consideration. So if you take on new business, what are your business reliant on? And we talk about risk. Which of those risks can you keep yourself, and which are transferable risks? So, and then we talk about your safety net, which you can transfer to insurance. Is your net big enough? Has it got holes in it? What does your contract say? And if we talk about contracts specifically, I want to talk about open liability or open-ended liability. So a whole lot of these big companies are very strict on the contracts. But if your business owner does not read the fine print on your contract, you open yourself for huge liability, and then business owner thinks your liability is going to stop at your business door. But if you cannot provide, if you cannot supply, if you go into bad debt, guess what? You are open in your personal capacity for that debt. And that is very important to remember when you sign a contract. What is your ability? Is your safety net big enough? Does it have holes in? Because a contract really changes the risk. Businesses may be accepting, huge indemnities, which they, as a small company starting, cannot afford. So that is very important. Yesterday's insurance can easily become inadequate for today's business. So do you look at your insurance? Is it adequate enough? You might have bought more trucks, or you might have bought more equipment. Are you reliant on only one piece of equipment in your machinery side? And if you are a manufacturer, what if that one machine breaks down and you still have all these costs to pay? You've got the fleet to pay, you've got the staff to pay, you've got loans to pay back. And is your business interruption enough? Did you tell your broker my turnover changed? Because your business interruption is reliant on your turnover. Did you change that? So those are very important questions that you need to ask before you go into this huge business that's going to increase your growth and your turnover or double it maybe. But are you covered? So I always say, risk always feels distant until it becomes yours. What are you going to do then?
Sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mana. It's as if, in simple terms, if you go and get a new cell phone, right, don't forget to let your insurance broker know, because if it gets lost, you're not going to be covered. So just think of it in those terms, I think, as a simple process. I'm going to now ask each of our co-hosts a very uncomfortable question, and I need you to come from your point of view, from your skill level, and from what you actually do as far as your clients. So what is the one big uncomfortable question that every growing business owner should ask themselves from your point of view? Let's start with Russell.
You haven't given me much time to think about that, have you? I think the reality in business is, when you look in the mirror, are you capable of doing what you're promising? I think there's, especially with salespeople over promise, under deliver. We know that. That's why sales has got such a bad stigma to it. Yet, in my perspective, sales is the nervous system of the body. If the nervous system of the body is failing, the body fails. Sales is the livelihood of any business, but you need to be real with yourself. Is what can you actually accomplish? What promises can you live up to? What are the solutions that you bring, and are those solutions real, or are they fictitious? With sales, it's not a fake it till you make it type of thing. That's where a lot of salespeople lose, because they do the over commit or over promise because they fake it. So I think the question we need to ask ourselves from a sales perspective is that I'm selling, is it tangible in the market? Does it solve the problem that my client is facing? and can I deliver it? Deliver better than what I'm selling. So I always say under promise and over deliver rather. So those would be from a sales perspective, David.
Thank you, Russell. Let's go to Wilhelm from a team's point of view and a people's point of view. What is that one uncomfortable question every growing business owner should ask themselves from a team point of view?
Yeah, well, I think about this. Just imagine if the local team, rugby team, get an opportunity to play against the Springboks, What a wonderful opportunity. Just think about all the feet, all the sales, all the pancakes that you can sell, and how it will actually bring lots of people to your town. And this wonderful opportunity to play against the Springboks. The question is, what will it do to your people, your team? You will never have a team again because they will kill you. You are not ready for the Springboks, So don't just look at your sales and the wonderful opportunities. Look at your team. Are your team ready for this? Do they trust one another? Do they have the energy? Are they ready to take up this wonderful opportunity before you can take up that opportunity? Make sure your team is ready.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And also the skills. Do they have the necessary skills to actually, complete and do whatever they need to do to deliver? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Wilhelm. Let's go to Glenn from your leadership point of view and purpose point of view and planning. Glenn?
Thanks, David. Very interesting conversation this, I must admit. What's the one uncomfortable question? I think I come back to capacity. Do I have the capacity to grow? So I'll answer that question with a question. I want to go through three different things. Do I have the capacity to grow, whether that's linearly or scaling? Because there is a difference. I think many people talk about scaling a business, but they don't fully understand what scaling really is, because they grow linearly and they think that's scaling. It's not. So that's an important aspect, and maybe it's something we need to chat about sometime too. The second point is, as far as the business values are concerned, and the core values of the business and the core business, is that growth and that business that we've actually tended for, whatever it might be, or that opportunity, is it actually in line with that? Because if it isn't, I guarantee when the obstacles come, and they will come, it's going to be a challenge, and you're probably going to end up failing. It has to be in line with your core values and your core business, because otherwise it's a bit pointless. Okay. And there needs to be focus, absolute focus and clarity around that. And the third thing is, am I prepared to adapt for that growth and actually change according to trends in the marketplace? Because again, there will be changes in the marketplace. You need to adapt to that as well. And will this be in line with that? So I can talk about many more, but I think those are the main three for me at this point in time. In terms of that uncomfortable question, answer those questions. And if you can move forward with that and say yes, then absolutely, you can do it. Thanks, David.
Fantastic, Glenn. Thank you. Let's go to Mana. From a risk point of view, insurance point of view, what is that uncomfortable question for every growing business?
Well, thinking back to the 80-20 rule, which is something that's very important to me, and your dependency on a supplier or people or whatever your dependencies are. So if opportunity arrives tomorrow, which part of your business would fail first? So I think if you can answer that and you can do something beforehand, then you would be okay. But which part of your business would fail first?
I think that's a really important question. From a tendering point of view and a bit of architectural point of view, I had a client last year who applied for 6 lounges, to do 6 lounges at the different airports in around the country. Now, from their point of view, when they put the 6 tenders together, they kind of inside their own minds identified how they would put together 6 lounges all at once if they were awarded once. My question comes in, is the person who's actually going to look at these tenders, and do they think that that company has the capacity to actually deliver 6 lounges. So if you look at it from getting contracts, etc., you always need to also look at it from your client's point of view. Do they believe that you have the capacity to actually deliver the product that you do? So that's just another line of thought. It's been a great session today, and I really appreciate it. And we do have this giveaway for you. If you wouldn't mind, go along and comment ready together with your big takeaway from today's discussion. Please put it in the comments, and we'll be sending you this book. It's a book that will be prepared from our discussion today, and we'll put it together, and it will be basically a reference guide for you so that you can actually apply it in your own business. So comment again, ready, and we'll send that to you a little bit later on. The next thing I want to do is ask you if there are any people amongst in the audience who would like to actually be a speaker. Please would you put speaker in the comments, and I will get hold of you and talk to you about the opportunity. We look for guest speakers who can add value to our audience. Remember what we're here to do. We're here to actually give wisdom and value back to our audience, because we believe that wisdom should not retire. So that's what we're here to do. And if you believe you can give wisdom, please come along. We don't do sales here. We just talk about wisdom, and we want to share that with our audience so they can go along and apply it in their own lives so that they can become better with whatever they do. Also, you can come along and become a follower on our group. You can scan that, or you can actually put follower, and I will invite you to put I'll DM you and get your number, and then I'll put you onto our WhatsApp group, or you can just scan that scan code there, the QR code, and you can become a follower. So that's what we're doing. And also, if you're here for the first time, please go along and subscribe to us, follow us on Vision 2026. That's what we do. So I want to now go around the room and just ask each of our co-hosts what their big takeaway was today. And I'm going to start with Mana.
I think my biggest takeaway today was that growth changes a business, and you have to prepare for the change that is coming your way, whether you can handle it or not. But I think you need to prepare and acknowledge that change might change your whole business, your whole outlook, and how you are used to do business. So change brings change.
Thank you, Mana. Let's go to Glenn. Glenn, what is your big takeaway today from what we've discussed?
Too much to say in 30 seconds. I think let me come back to that acronym GAP. The gap between demand and capacity. Interesting enough, if you take the G is growth, the A is alignment, and the P is the pressure. For the growth, it's new opportunity creates significantly greater demand. The alignment is the people, the processes, the systems, the cash, etc., cash flow, leadership. And then the pressure is when that capacity doesn't align with growth, then the pressure appears somewhere in the business. And that's when things start falling apart. So for me, it's about the gap. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Glenn. I like that gap. We'll do something with that one. Thank you. Let's go to Wilhelm. Wilhelm?
Yeah, I also want to focus on the capacity, but more of the emotional capacity. When people want to grow, they need to have the emotional capacity to be able to handle that growth. What Mana actually said also is that there's change. When there's growth, there's change. And that's a very important part of leadership as well, is to understand why people resist change in the first place, and then how to lead them through this change. And with that, keeping the morale up is hard. And you need to be able to do that, to be able to handle the change and the growth.
Thank you. Russell?
I think my takeaway is something that Marna said. I always talk about the weakest link in business, but I prefer the way you put it, which part breaks first. or would fail first when growth comes. I think that's something that I can take away and focus on more, specifically with what I'm doing with CTAP and so forth. Thanks.
Oh, no, thank you so much. My big takeaway is systems. Have the systems in place. And I've realized how important systems are in any business. Even myself, in actually preparing these sessions that we do every Thursday. Before I used to just hammer away every day and actually preparing whatever's needed to be prepared for. But now I have a system in place, and it's actually made it so much easier. Really has, and it's actually freed up a lot of my time to do more than what I did before. And I think that's also a danger in itself, is that, once you have the system, you have more time, and then you do more and you get more busy. But that's just something from my side. So I'd like to just thank the audience for being here. I see the number of comments. We will go back and share your takeaways. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all being here. Thank you to all of you. That's what makes this platform really important, is your participation and your comments. I really appreciate them all, and it's really great. And we'll go along and comment on those, and we'll also send you that booklet, which I think is going to really be something that you can actually share with other people as well. And please invite them to come into Vision 2026. That's what we're here to do, is to give you wisdom, so that because we believe wisdom shouldn't retire, and we want you to take that away and apply it in your own life. So thanks very much for being here today. Thanks to our co-hosts. It's really been a great session. I appreciate it, and enjoy. And we'll see you next week. We will have a guest next week, and we look forward to presenting that. Remember, on Mondays, we will put the event out there on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. On Tuesday, we'll do a bio. Wednesday, we'll do a post about what the subject is. And then Thursday will be the event itself. And then on Friday will be the newsletter. So follow up on the newsletter. And there also is, now we've introduced, because we have more time, because we put processes in place and systems, we now do a newspaper on Sunday. So you can always go along and look at that. Thank you all. Take care and have a fantastic week. And it's getting warmer. Enjoy. Bye.
Welcome to Vision 2026. We give expertise a voice. A platform where bold ideas, lived expertise, and real experience shape how we grow, lead, and create impact in 2026 and beyond. Meet your host, David Bauer, bid architect and strategic thinker, who helps leaders turn complexity into clarity and gives business leaders a voice that wins in the real world. Marna Rowitz, seasoned strategist and business leader, helping people protect what they've built and grow with clarity, resilience, and foresight. Glenn Leese-Jones, Map4Life coach with decades of experience guiding people and entrepreneurs to find purpose, set direction, and map their journey to meaningful success. Russell John Fagan, sales mastery trainer, who brings practical sales insight and transformational strategies that help individuals and businesses increase their influence and performance. Wilhelm Lombard, human systems and team performance coach focused on helping organizations strengthen team alignment, leadership energy, and human systems, so people are ready for growth before growth exposes weaknesses. Together, we bring unique perspectives and deep expertise so you can think bigger, act bolder, and make 2026 your breakthrough year. Hit that subscribe button now and follow Vision 2026 for your weekly dose of expert insight, future-focused conversations, and real-world perspectives shaping South Africa. This is Vision 2026, giving expertise a voice.